everyone, my name's Miranda, and today I am here to review Lois Lane Double Down by Gwenda, which is the sequel to Lois Lane Fallout, and a book I have been so anticipating. And I'm so happy that I found an arc of it. Lois Lane Fallout was one of my favorite books of 2015, but I sadly had a brain fart and forgot to put it on my list of favorite books of 2015. And Lois Lane Double Down comes out in May, I believe, but it's amazing. And let me just tell you how excited I am for this series, because I was really worried that the second book wouldn't be able to live up to the expectations because the first book was so amazing. But I was worried like how it could continue on, you know, like this whole thing with Smallville guy and Lois like being friends but not meeting, like how long is that going to continue on for, because we know they can't meet until they're older when Lois Lane and Superman do meet for real. I mean, Lois Lane Fallout, it didn't really set up anything that needed to be continued. It was just that it was an amazing world, and Lois Lane was an amazing character who I really wanted to read more about. And Double Down is a lot like Fallout, I will admit. It does follow the same formula, which I don't really have too much of a problem with, because I mean, if it ain't broke, why fix it, right? But this is the second book, and I feel like it might start to get a little repetitive if we always just do this same formula. So I'm hoping we'll change it up a little bit, maybe in future books, if we do get future books, fingers crossed. But basically, Double Down takes place pretty recently after the events of Fallout have happened, with Lois kind of working at the Scoop now and trying to find her next big piece after taking down the warheads and exposing all this corruption that was happening in her school and with Principal Butler. And she's having a hard time finding this new piece, so she now has to write a fluff piece, kind of. All her other coworkers have written kind of just like a piece that it doesn't really change anything. It's not really groundbreaking, but it's just a nice piece to write. So it's her turn to write it, and at the beginning she is going to write about a mural that is happening in the kind of not so nice part of Metropolis. When she's down there interviewing the boy who is making the mural, she sees her friend Maddie's twin Melody in the part of town that Melody, who is very popular, very pretty, very like rich and affluent, should never ever be in for any reason. And not only is Melody there, but she's also behaving very strangely and ends up collapsing, and that's where the mystery kind of goes off from there, because Lois takes it upon herself, since this is Maddie's sister, and since Lois of course is a journalist and always wants to get to the bottom of the truth, she wants to know why this is happening to Melody and how they can fix it. And it's very interesting. The story was kind of similar to what Fallout was. It was just kind of like this crazy thing that you're like, oh my gosh, this could never happen in real life, and then Lois is able to figure it out, which is amazing because Lois is an amazing character. At the same time, what adds kind of more emotion to it, which kind of makes me like this one just a little better, is the fact that it's about Melody, who is Maddie's sister, and Maddie is Lois's new best friend, and Lois isn't really used to having friends, so she's kind of trying to like tread lightly and find out like the boundaries between like how far she can push trying to find out the truth without angering Melody or angering Maddie by angering Melody. And then there's also the whole problem of Melody and Maddie not really getting along that well, and Lois kind of trying to tread in the middle of that, because we all know it is not the funnest thing being in the middle of sibling rivalries, and that's kind of where Lois finds herself without really knowing what caused this rivalry. We have that whole story, and then there's a whole other story going on with Smallville guy, and I don't want to say too much about that story because it's very spoilery for the book. But just know that Smallville guy definitely has a bigger part than he did in the first book, and he kind of has his own mystery, and his version of events is set up in a way now, and this whole other like story part of the book is set up in a way now where I almost feel like if they wanted to, they could write a book from Smallville guy's point of view, like as he is Lois's age 16, like going through his side of events, because he has stuff going on in his own life that's hinted at and like talked about, but we don't see it as much. It's almost like if we were reading from his point of view, like what we would see from Lois, like we would get the gist of what's happening, but by reading Lois's point of view, we like are in the thing, immersed in what's happening. We know her thinking, we know what's happening like word for word, whereas Smallville guy, we're just kind of getting his recap of events and his talking about after it happens. So I would definitely be interested in seeing a book now from Smallville guy's point of view. But if we don't have that, that's okay, because I mean, you could just pick up pretty much any comic book and read from the male's point of view. So it is amazing to have Lois Lane as a series, and as a series that is so flawless and so amazing. Lois is so kick butt, and she remains so kick butt and so strong and so funny. I absolutely love it. I mean, my hands down favorite thing about Lois Lane, I said this in the first book and it continues in the second book, is how even though she has this whole thing going on with Smallville guy where she's like, oh, he's cute, oh, maybe I want to be more than friends with him, she just is like, she like verbatimly says like, oh, we're not gonna be these girls who just sit around and talk about boys. Like, we have bigger fish to fry, we have bigger issues to figure out. And it's amazing because she's a 16-year-old girl and yet she's like, okay, boys are cute, I like boys, but we're not gonna sit around and talk about them because we got shit to get done and we got stuff to do. And I love it, and it's so refreshing and so amazing. Like, I love Lois Lane so much. She's quickly becoming one of my favorite characters, and I never even considered Lois Lane, like, she was just there for me. And in this book we also get to see a little more of Lucy Lane, which is really cool because I didn't know too much about Lucy Lane, but now with Supergirl having Lucy Lane on it, it's kind of interesting now to like picture her kind of a version of when she's older and then see her as she's younger. So it's kind of cool, like, knowing more about these characters. And then what's also cool is, I didn't realize this in the first book, but I'm sure it's true in the first book as well, the villains in this book are actually comic book villains. They're not particularly Lois Lane villains, but a lot of them are Supergirl or Superboy or Superman villains. And it's just cool kind of seeing like their start, because they're not doing like too evil things right now. They're just kind of like mediocre evil, you know, like Loki or Lex Luthor would be like, oh, that's cute if they saw it, but like they wouldn't like hand them a medal or anything. So it's kind of like seeing them get their start, and the fact that like Lois Lane as a 16-year-old girl is able to kind of put these guys back down in their place and make them rethink where they are is amazing. And I also just am really excited to see where we could go, because the world definitely seems to be getting a little bigger in this book and expanding more and becoming more towards what we're used to. So I'm very, very excited to see where this series is going to go, and I cannot wait for the second book, and I definitely give it 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely love it. It lived up to all my expectations, and I was very, very worried that it wouldn't be as good, because you know sometimes when you read a book and you're so in love with it and then you have to wait like a year for the next one to come out and you're just reading it and you're like, what did I like about this series in the first place, or your expectations are just too high. That was definitely not the case with this one. It was so good. It was very comparable to Follow, I think, is the only criticism I have of it, in that like it didn't like wow or improve upon anything. It's just as good as Fallout, where sometimes I enjoy sequels when they're even better than the first book because the first book was so amazing. So if you can improve upon the first book, that's freaking amazing to me, whereas this book was just like comparable. Like Fallout and Double Down had very similar feels to me, and it was very similar reading experiences, but it was still such a good book, and I definitely recommend you all get it when it comes out in May, because it's beautiful. It's wonderful. Lois Lane is a badass, and I love her so much, and I love this series, and I cannot wait to see what more Gwenda Bond has in store for Lois and her readers, and I am so excited. So if you are looking forward to reading Double Down, or if you have read Fallout, which is up there somewhere, please feel free to leave your comments about it down below in the comment section. Also, make sure you give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it and want to see all sorts of new book reviews, and subscribe to my channel down below to want to make all sorts of new videos, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!